More about European attitudes and opinion on child safety online. 1 week ahead of the vote in the Council on the proposed regulation on child sexual abuse, we would like to share with you the results of ECPAT and NSPCC survey exploring what EU citizens really think about online privacy and the need to ensure child safety online. To exchange with me on this crucial issue, I'm honored to present Rani Govender, Senior Policy and Public Affairs Officer at NSPCC, UK leading charity committed to prevent abuse and helping those affected by it to recover. Jana Popovic, Policy Advisor at Child Focus, Belgian foundation working on the disappearance and the sexual exploitation of children. And Marina Lopez, Advocacy Officer at FAPMI, the Federation of Association for the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse, working in Spain to prevent any form of violence against children and adolescents. Thank you for being here with us today. Before giving the floor to my co-panelists, I would like to present today our survey and the journey leading to the results that we are sharing with you today. I'll start with a small introduction on who we are, ECPAT and NSPCC, before explaining the context of this poll, how we conducted them, and then finally, what are our key findings. So allow me a small presentation on who we are. ECPAT International stands as a united front of 126 civil society organizations united by the shared vision to tackle sexual exploitation of children. ECPAT International has over 3 decades of experience in tackling this complex crime and the challenge it poses to our society, including online. To conduct the survey with us, we have naturally partnered with NSPCC, as I mentioned, UK leading charity fighting child sexual abuse, helping children in need, protecting children at risk, and preventing child from abuse. What are we talking about today? In 2022, about over 88 million of season 5 were reported to NCMEC, the US Center. This means every second, at least 2 images or videos of child sexual abuse are shared online. These numbers are crazy high, and behind each of them, we ask you to understand that there is a child there is a child who lives with the long-term trauma of their abuse, their violation of their privacy, and the circulation of their images online and their sharing of their abuse over and over. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. All recent evidence-based research indicates a global escalation of child sexual exploitation and abuse online with evolving forms of abuse. As we say, we only know what we know. New data published by Internet Watch Foundation have shown an increase of 26% of the material hosted on EU platforms. The upcoming Global Threat Assessment launched next Tuesday by WeProtect also highlight the escalating global scale of child sexual abuse and exploitation and the new form of abuse. NCMEC has mentioned an increase of 82% in regards to reporting of online grooming and financial extortion of children. The same findings were made by the FBI in early 2023, raising the alarm about the rise in financial extortion of children. And the use of new technology make this even worse with AI such as ChatGPT, as some of my colleagues mentioned today. Faced with this reality, ECPAT International called for an urgent, holistic, and global response, including evidence-informed digital legislation and policy. In May 2022, the European Commission finally published a proposal for regulation to prevent and combat child sexual abuse. This proposed law will make it mandatory for online services to assess and prevent the risk of any child sexual abuse on their platform. If this preventive measure fails, a court or an independent national authority will be authorized to mandate online platforms to detect, report, and remove such content online. This proposal has thrown many into a frenzied debate, with commentators repeatedly placing child rights against privacy. As representative of civil society organizations grounded on fundamental rights, we are committed to ensure a balance between safeguarding children's rights and upholding privacy rights. There has been many representation of the public opinion by various stakeholders involved in this legislative process, as you can see on the screen. Our aim was to gather reliable and representative quantitative data from adults across the EU and the UK to understand their view on the balance between personal privacy and the protection of children from sexual abuse and exploitation online. We wanted to confront our views with public opinion and assess their understanding of how and if European citizens were willing to reach a compromise for child safety online. Besides, surveying the European public about upcoming legislation is crucial for ensuring that policymakers are accountable to their electorate. The survey data provide an indicator of public sentiment. These offer lawmakers a roadmap that aligns with the will of the people that they represent. This is why we conducted a similar multi-country survey back in 2021 before the launch of the proposal, and why we have decided to repeat this process again in 2023, now that the proposal is out, ensuring consistency in our representation of the public views. How we did the survey. As mentioned, we acknowledge the diversity of views and data on this topic. And this is why it was crucial for us to follow industry standard, transparent and methodological sound procedure to ensure that we understand what the public wanted. We have worked with Savanta, an expert research agency, member of the British Polling Council, to ensure the integrity of our research process. We took great care in maintaining a balanced approach on the issue. As you will see from our questionnaire that we will share online, our questions were based on our survey from 2021. These questions back in 2021 were drafted following a qualitative research with 30 people in all of the member states poll to formulate the question. You will also notice in our survey that there are several explanatory sections explaining clearly what the detection tools are doing, that they scan personal activity of user, meaning direct messaging, or that grooming technology is based on tech recognition of your messaging. We also including questions like, how familiar are you with the concept of end-to-end encryption? As I said, we wanted to make sure that the people understood what they were asked, and the results show how crucial this is. Regarding end-to-end encryption, over 70% of the polled citizens have either said that they have heard of it but could not explain it, or have never heard of it, or simply don't know what this is. Savanta surveyed 25,000 adults across 16 European countries, which you will see the list on the screen with the number of citizens surveyed in each of the countries. These countries were selected based on our 2021 polls to ensure consistency and geographical diversity. We wanted to gather more diverse data and cover a wider geographical range, and this is why we added a few countries. And as my colleague Rani will show, it was crucial for us to also include the UK as they were going into this similar legislative process at home. The polls were conducted online. There were benchmarks and quotas to ensure representative sample, and the data were clean and weighed against this demographic. We randomized the selection of the response to avoid any bias. And I mean, all Savanta procedure and methodology is available on their website. What have we found? What are our key findings? As in 2021, 2023 results show unwavering support for child safety online and the need for regulation of online platforms, including in end-to-end encrypted space. The results show that there is steady and coherent support from the European citizen. Let me go through a few of the key stats that we highlight, but I invite all of you to look at our full table and full survey that will be published, that is already published on our website. First, a large majority of EU citizens agree that children are increasingly at risk online, not just of general risk, but of risk of child sexual abuse and exploitation. The data also reveals that online service providers are one of the most important actors in preventing and protecting children from sexual abuse online. 91% of the European respondents support child safety by design. What do I mean by that? Is that citizens have expressed that online service providers should be required to design and adapt their service to prevent child sexual abuse and exploitation online. 95% of European citizen polled stress the need for a clear legal framework to regulate online service providers. And when it comes to the contentious debate around online privacy, ECPAT and NSPCC poll showed that the majority of adults recognize and understand the importance of balancing privacy and online safety. 71% of the adults in the EU are willing to compromise some degree of their privacy if it helps to protect children from risk of child sexual abuse online. Of course, this doesn't mean that they are willing to give up on their privacy completely, but understanding the tools that this technology are using and understanding the impact on their privacy, they still largely support the introduction of legislation to impose obligation on online platforms. This is also reflected in their voting preference, as you can see on the screen. At least 2 in 5 said that they would be more likely to vote for representative if they supported a law to protect children from online sexual abuse and exploitation. Coming concretely to the different platforms and the different type of abuse, more than 70% of adults confirms that they are willing to require online service providers to detect, report, and remove known and new child sexual abuse material, as well as grooming, including on end-to-end encrypted services. We have asked the citizen the question for each type of platform separately. We have also specifically asked for the use of text recognition and language processing tools on their messaging to detect grooming. And the numbers are always the same, over 70%. The message is clear. Privacy concerns should not eclipse the safety of children. Of course, people care about their online privacy, as the data of our research show, but people also want children to be safe online. And if it helps protect children online, they are willing to compromise some of their privacy. Our results are consistent across the EU and the UK, and our survey shows that despite diversity in cultural and historical background of EU countries, EU citizens share the same sensitivities when it comes to online safety and balancing their privacy online. We have picked up here on the screen 3 key countries, France, Germany, and Sweden, and you would say that overall the same numbers are appearing. You could see that there is all the countries are closely linked to the EU average. Of course, if you look into our table, you would see some minor variants like Czech citizen being, for instance, slightly more privacy protective than the EU average, or Greek and Portuguese expressing very strong call for the use of the technology in all online platforms. However, it is striking from our research that despite clear divergence at the policymaker level, the demand from the EU citizen for comprehensive legislation on online platforms is steady and coherent. Citizen want legislation to prevent and detect all types of sexual abuse in all environments. And this is the same in all European and in the UK. On this note, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Rani Govender from NSPCC to present a bit more the UK angle and their experience in this legislative process to regulate online platforms. Rani, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Yveline, for talking us through that. And good morning, everyone. I'm Rani Govender. I'm a Senior Policy Officer at the NSPCC. As Yveline mentioned, we're the UK's leading children's charity, and we work to prevent child sexual abuse and indeed all forms of abuse and neglect to children. We were really pleased to be able to commission this work with ECPAT to better understand the perspectives of the public about children's safety online. The UK recently had an online safety bill passed, so it's a really important time for us to continue to understand how the public feel about measures to protect children online. And of course, there's some interesting correlations with what's happening in the EU at the same time. So for my presentation this morning, I'm going to talk through a bit of a comparison between the UK and the EU's results. And then I'm also going to give some reflections about the passage of the UK's online safety bill, what it does and why the NSPCC think it's a really important piece of legislation, and then also give some reflections on what this might mean in an international and global context. So to start off with looking at the actual results, it's really clear that across these regions, there is an overwhelming commonality in the priorities of the UK and the EU public. Citizens in both regions want the same outcomes. They want children to be safe online, and to achieve this, they support regulation that's legally mandated and is going to require online service providers to be proactive in the way that they tackle child sexual abuse on their platforms. If we start with the importance of why regulation online matters in the first place, over 85% of both UK and EU citizens agree that children are increasingly at risk of sexual abuse online. So there's clearly that baseline public concern that children aren't safe on these platforms that they're using day in, day out. And this is something that policymakers, I suppose, really do need to bear in mind, that there is this strong public concern. And then when we think about what the solution should be, citizens in both regions want regulation that is going to require services to prevent this harm to children in the first place. So in the UK, 92% of respondents want online service providers to be required to design and adapt their services to prevent sexual abuse to children from happening. And really similarly in the EU, this was really high again at 91%. And then in cases where harm does occur across regions, again, citizens want services to be proactive in their response. So 8 in 10 respondents in both the UK and the EU support services being obligated to use tools and use automated tools to detect, report and remove child sexual abuse on their services. Importantly, the public thinks this should happen across different types of platforms that children are using as part of their daily lives. So when asked, for example, about end-to-end encrypted messaging services and whether they should be required to legally detect, report and remove this abuse, 86% in the UK said they should be required to, end-to-end encrypted services should be required to act, and only 6% said they shouldn't. And again, we're seeing that commonality in the EU. 81% said that these services should be required to take action, and only 8% said they should not. So I think we can see from these polling results that across regions, voters want regulation to be in place so that tech companies are going to finally step up and tackle the abuse which has been able to reach such unacceptable levels on their platforms. And they want this happening regardless of the type of service. As Eileen said, they recognise the importance of privacy, but in both regions, over 7 in 10 said that they would be willing to compromise some degree of their privacy online if it helps to protect children from potential sexual abuse. So I think there's a really strong call to action from the public in terms of policymakers taking action on this issue. And as I mentioned, in the UK, we've recently seen some really positive progress on this. So in the UK, the Online Safety Bill recently passed. It will soon become the official law. And what this bill does is it imposes a legal duty on tech platforms to prevent and tackle child sexual abuse and exploitation, as well as harm to children on their services. So platforms are going to be required to assess the risk to children's safety on their platforms and then put in place mitigations and measures to tackle these risks. And what's important is Ofcom, who are going to be the body in the UK to regulate this new system. They've been given strong enforcement powers to make sure that companies are taking these new duties seriously and that they can act if companies aren't stepping up. From the NSPCC's perspective, there are a number of important elements to the bill, which we think means it will meaningfully change children's experiences online. And I'll touch on 2 key ones now that relate to child sexual abuse. So the first of these is about end-to-end encryption. Any regulatory framework that's aiming to protect children from abuse and exploitation must recognise the risk that private messaging poses to children's safety. We know that it is the front line of online grooming. In the UK's legislation, end-to-end encrypted services are in scope, so they have the same duties as other platforms to assess those risks and mitigate them where there is a risk to children's safety. And they may be required to use proactive technologies if Ofcom find that they are consistently failing to take the right action to make children's safety a priority. For the NSPCC, when we've worked on this bill, keeping these services in scope was a top priority for us because we see it as fundamental to the framework of the bill. If it had been taken out of scope, services would have been able to use end-to-end encryption as a loophole to avoid duties to keep children safe. And we know that as an impact of this, it would have blindfolded law enforcement to attempts to tackle abuse on these services. So ensuring the new regulation was technology neutral and not making carve-outs for private messaging means we know that all platforms where children's safety is at risk will have a duty to prevent and detect abuse. And what's important is we know this is what online users want. I think it's really clear from this polling that in the UK and in the EU, adults want tech companies to be taking greater responsibility for the harm that occurs on their services. And so this approach pushes tech companies to invest and develop the solutions that protect children and uphold the right to privacy of all their users. The other part of our bill, which I thought I'd touch on, is that it requires companies to detect and take action against both known and previously undetected child sexual abuse material. There is no distinction made between these types of material in our legislation. I think from our perspective, it would have been incredibly hard to justify to the victims of these horrific offences if only certain categories of abusive material had been included at all. All children who experience sexual abuse deserve protection. I think one thing that can often be lost in discussions about privacy online is the privacy of children who have experienced abuse. Whether this abuse material is known or unknown, it is fundamental to the privacy of those children that it is swiftly detected and removed. Any other approach does ultimately fail these children. And we know that the solution to detecting this material differs, but the UK's legislation has aimed to make sure that all children are going to be effectively safeguarded, even though they may have had different experiences. And then the last point I wanted to touch on was the thinking about the increasing regulation to protect children online in an international context. Child abuse is not siloed by country or region, and neither is the online world. Online child sexual abuse is a global challenge, NCMEC, based in US, who acts as the global clearinghouse for child sexual abuse material, received over 32 million reports of suspected child sexual exploitation online to their cyber tip line last year. A global challenge requires global action to tackle it. All children can be made safer through strong regulation, and we know it is going to take an international effort to show tech companies that the era of self-regulation, which has so badly failed children, is over. Global harmony and alignment in regulation that makes children a priority and ensures there are no loopholes that or get out clauses for services to exploit can keep all children safer. It can raise standards globally, and it can show that we are ambitious and we mean what we say when we talk about keeping children safe online. The last point I wanted to make is some of you might have seen that recently a survivor who uses the pseudonym Frida and who the NSPCC is really pleased to be able to work with, recently spearheaded a letter to tech companies urging them to work with survivors to assess the safety risks of their products. This letter was signed by 42 other survivors of online abuse and harm based across the world. I think it's really clear that survivors are fed up with tech company inaction, and they want comprehensive regulation that is no longer going to leave children to bear the burden of unsafe platforms. And we need decision makers to listen to this and to act on it, because it's what children, these survivors, need and deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rani, for this very powerful example that the UK is giving us, and we hope our policy makers may follow. Now, Tiana will provide us the Belgium angle and much more new views from the Belgium.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Tiana Popovic, and I work for Child Focus for 7 years right now. So I've worked 5 years as an analyst of child sexual abuse material, and I'm now working already 2 years as a policy advisor for Child Focus on child sexual abuse material, unaccompanied minors, and international child abductions. So these actually were the only numbers that I will mention during my presentation. You have heard already a lot of numbers, and I'm not going to use any more numbers. I'm going to try to talk about the children in the pictures. And thank you. And when I mention the children in the pictures, I also actually I'm making a reference to a movie that is really a must-see movie. It's from Akim Def and from Simon Nesht, and it actually follows the work of Task Force Argos. So Task Force Argos is a specialized division within the Australian Federal Police that investigates child sexual exploitation networks. And I will also try to shed some light on the experience of the analyst itself within Child Focus. So please let me briefly introduce Child Focus. So Child Focus is actually the Belgian Foundation for Missing and Sexually Exploited Children since 1998. We were modeled on NCMEC. NCMEC is kind of our mother organization. We operate a helpline 24/7. We operate a hotline, so we are the contact point for images of child sexual abuse. And we are also an awareness center together with Mediawes, Média Animation, and Conseil supérieur de l'éducation aux médias. We are one of the first members from InHope. And for people who don't know who InHope is an international network of hotlines worldwide. And we are also part of InSafe. Since 2021, we participate in Project Arachnid. And Project Arachnid is an automated web crawler tool that detects known images of child sexual abuse on the internet. Actually, what I'm going to tell you today is probably something that you have heard already many times before, but it's important to emphasize and stress it. All around the globe, many actors from civil society, from private companies, from law enforcement, from helplines and hotlines are fighting on all fronts to eradicate child sexual exploitation. Yet, despite all our efforts, the volume of child sexual abuse material and reports of grooming and sextortion increase every year. So we may say, or there is sufficient evidence indicating that no educational programs and reporting tools are not sufficient on their own. What we need is a legal framework that is dedicated to the cause, that is part of a 360-degree approach that effectively protects children online. And so let me tell you why. I will give you 3 reasons. So first reason is we need a legal framework that detects known, unknown material and grooming in all corners of the internet. So this includes interpersonal communication and it includes end-to-end encryption. End-to-end encryption is not necessarily a safe environment for children. Child Focus witnesses on a daily basis how children are lured from social media platforms and online gaming platforms to end-to-end encrypted or encrypted. Not all interpersonal communication are fully end-to-end encrypted, but they are lured into encrypted spaces where they are coerced, where they are misled, where they are deceived into sharing intimate images of themselves. These children are victims of grooming and sextortion. And those children that do reach out to our helpline in total panic and emotionally devastated, that seek our help to report and to prevent the dissemination of their images, they actually hear too often today that we cannot reassure them 100% that the platform will take action in a timely manner. So a couple of weeks ago, we at Child Focus, we had this situation. There was a child that contacted us that was a victim of sextortion. We contacted the platform as part of our trusted flagger status. And the platform sent us an automatic notice saying that they, due to privacy reasons, were not able to access the communication between the victim and the offender. 2 days later, the images of that victim went on the web, online. We see that a lot of offenders are using end-to-end encryption to share on tactics and strategies of their abuse with other offenders, and they're sharing abusive material there. These end-to-end encrypted environments are becoming more of a safe haven for offenders, and they pretty much are untouchable. Roughly about a year ago, Child Focus noticed within the work of our hotline, websites that were disseminating on a massive scale child sexual abuse videos. We know that our colleagues in the UK, IWF, were witnessing the same thing a couple of months before, and they labeled it as ICAP. It's called Invite Child Abuse Pyramid Websites. These websites are shared by offenders on a massive scale as a part of a rewarding system where they get access to new material. Child Focus, IWF, we have tracked count of all these websites. We have 350. I didn't want to mention more numbers. IWF has 10,000, so many more. But what we have seen when we keep account of all these websites is that the same accounts reappear again and again. So that means that the same accounts associated with the dissemination of these child sexual abuse videos can do it again and again because the platform does not take efficient action against these accounts. Second reason, we need this legislation to protect the privacy of children who are victims of image-based sexual abuse. The Canadian Centre for Child Protection started with Project Arachnid because survivors themselves, after a study that they had conducted in 2016, stated that the online availability of their images weighs mentally harder on them than the abuse itself. An abuse image is like a permanent digital criminal record that haunts them for the rest of their lives. Children should not have to worry constantly about someone that might have seen their images or recognize them. The removal of these images is key to protect their right to privacy and mental well-being. Coming to the third reason, we need to make more efficient use of human resources and technology. This will not only liberate capacity for proactive search and thorough investigations that will actually help to save lives of children, it is equally important for the protection of the mental well-being of all actors involved in the fight against CSAM. Hotlines, law enforcement agencies, content moderators, but also the general public are on numerous occasions exposed to the same harmful images because known images continue to circulate even after X removal orders. They can be easily re-uploaded due to improper detection methods and negligent safety measures. Nearly half of all images that were targeted by Arachnid for removal had been previously detected on the respective service providers themselves. So it's not a sustainable solution until now. The vast amount of abuse images of children is unimaginable, unthinkable, unbearable. But yet those numbers are not getting through to the decision makers. So let me not use numbers this time, but let me use a reenactment story. In November 2019, Child Focus and Wunderman Thompson, that is a marketing agency, developed a reenactment movie called The Chalet, The Cabin. The audience was promised to see an adult pornography movie made by one of our most famous Belgian sexuologists. But what they got instead was a reenactment of a child sexual abuse scene between two adults. You can imagine that a lot of people were very shocked. And others were shuffling, uncomfortable in their seats. That happens often when you really talk about the details of these images. And some people were outraged, and even others, they went that far as to report this movie to our contact point. But the scene that was actually used in that movie was based on images that I had seen before on many occasions and that I had also reported on many occasions. So I will never forget that image. And that image was a 6-year-old girl with a black marker written, "Fuck me," an arrow to her vagina. And that was that image, that snapshot that I will never forget in my life. So children are subjected to an horrendous crime for the sexual entertainment of others, and we need this legislation to put a halt to that. And no, education and reporting tools are not enough. Most victims of child sexual abuse are prepubescent or very young. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tiana, for this powerful speech and for reminding us of the reality of this crime and how all the action that we as child rights organization are already taking to tackle this crime, and that we nevertheless come with the conclusion, this is not enough. We are doing education, we are doing prevention. Of course, this can all be strengthened, but reporting is not the solution. We want online platform to play their role and to act on it. It's not okay for us that at the moment we cannot guarantee victims that a platform will remove what is an illegal image, an illegal and blatant illegal picture of their abuse. Thank you very much for these words and why these tools are needed, but also I think you also made it clear why this was efficient for all our ecosystem. With that, I will give the floor to our colleague Marina to present some views from Spain.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for being here, and thank you to those who are listening to us online. First of all, I would like to tell you I'm going to speak a little bit about the numbers and data in Spain, and also I'm going to talk about a specific example and about how all these numbers, data, and the survey fits in all of this. So first of all, I'm going to talk about some data in Spain. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children from June 2023, out of the 32 million reports received by the cyber pipeline in 2022, over 77,000 reports were resolved to Spain. And out of these, more than 11,400 were actionable reports on Instagram, and more than 8,700 were actionable reports in Google. Now let's move on to some specific CSAM data. According to a report from our colleagues in Protect Children in Finland, the report name is Redirection Survey Report, Spanish-speaking CSAM users in the dark web. About 25% of men and women in Spain suffer some kind of child sexual abuse. We believe that these numbers are even higher because, as you know, children always find difficult to talk about it, and even when we are adults. Then more or less 84% of the cases, the abuser is known by the kid. And in the major part of the cases, in more than 50%, it's part of the family, which makes everything even more complicated than it already is. In 2015, 2% of all the child sexual abuse in the world was hosted in Spain, and after 2015, Spain has not been mentioned among the top countries hosting CSAM, but this is not good news. I mean, somehow it is good news, but it's not, because the good news would be that there were 0 cases. So we believe we still have to fight to reduce these numbers even more. And about the behavior of the abusers and of people consuming CSAM, 70% were under 18 years old. This is really scary to believe that the major part of these are kids under 18 years old. 39% were under 13 years old. And the 50% of these kids, the first exposure to this was accidental. They were usually in groups with friends, etc., and they came up to see these images online. And that's how they become addicted to it. And one of the main problems we are facing in Spain, and I know it's also a common problem in other countries, is that in 2019, Spanish police received notice on more than 6,000 individuals sharing CSAM online with a period of 2 weeks. However, only 1,300 cases were investigated further because they don't have enough policemen, enough resources. And that's why this regulation is important. It will allow police and the judicial system to work with more resources to detect and to eliminate all the images online. And now, I mean, I've said a lot of numbers, I know. So I would like to talk about an example that has happened these last weeks in Spain, which has shocked the country and has been really present on the media and also in international newspapers, so maybe you know about it. It happened in a little village in the south of Spain, and there are images of 21 girls naked on group chats, and these were fake naked pictures created by a lot of kids. I think there were 26 kids, between 11 and 17 years old. They created these fake naked images with an artificial intelligence application, which is like less than 10 euros. They pay it, they hide it in the phone, and they create these images, and they share it through the internet. The pictures were everywhere. The girls didn't want to go out of their houses, some of them, or to the school, and a lot of mothers reported this to the police, and one of them made it public because she was really worried for the girls, and she wanted them to have social support and to have a normal life again. They were also really worried because they couldn't eliminate, as you know, the pictures, and they were worried it would be all over the internet in every kind of possible webpage. And this case is important because I think it has shown us 4 important things. First of all, the complexity and the difficulty in some families, because in one of the families, the brother was one of the kids creating these images, and the sister was one of the victims and her preachers were online. So the parents were really worried because they had the victim and the abuser in their own family. And as you know, sometimes this is what usually happens. Second of all, I think this case has shown the danger and also the accessibility to artificial intelligence that children have nowadays. I repeat, with less than 10 euros, you can have this app and you can create fake images of someone, naked images. And third, I think it has shown the importance of education and prevention. But last point, as my colleague said before, it has shown the need of a strong regulation that allows the police and the judicial system to eliminate all these pictures and to have more resources. Of course, this is just an example. These numbers are increasing. This summer, this also happened to 2 famous people in Spain, and not only famous people, but normal people. So now I would like to talk a little bit about the numbers of the survey in Spain. They are more or less like in the median of the European Union countries. More than 96% say it is important that there are laws in place to regulate online service providers in order to prevent and combat online child sexual abuse and exploitation. And I think, in my opinion, the most important number is that almost 64% say that they would be willing to compromise some degree of their privacy online if it helps to protect children. I think that people are more conscious with this topic than what we can imagine or think at first sight, and I think these numbers is what they saw. And also, I would like to say finally that these weeks I've had some meetings with Spanish policymakers at the EU level and the national level, and we have their support. So even though we are in a critical moment right now with the votings for the regulation, I want to send like an optimistic message. I think that we are more people fighting for child rights and against child sexual abuse than are the people that don't support this kind of regulation. And these numbers is what they saw, I think. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marina, for this great presentation where you also remind us of the reality of the cases and what we are talking when we are talking of child sexual abuse, and the reality and the complexity also, again, of reporting when you are talking about, for instance, your own images or crimes that were committed by your own relatives. Just wanted to flag a few last numbers in this respect. 98% of the images from IWF, so the UK outlines, relates to children younger than 13 years old. 99% of the reporting to NECMEC comes from internet service provider. I don't think I need to comment. It's clear enough that reporting is not the solution. We at ECPAT International firmly believe that online grooming, sharing of child sexual abuse material, and live streaming of child sexual abuse are crimes that need an urgent, holistic, and global response. As colleagues have mentioned, and has consistent evidence-based research demonstrate, these crimes are growing exponentially and continue to evolve. Our findings from 2021 and 2023 underscore a major growing concern among European citizens. Children in 2023 are not safer online than they were in 2021. These results come also with a clear demand. Public want more assertive action by tech companies. They want to be a legal obligation, and while they are prepared to compromise their privacy to ensure children are safe online, and they are prepared to compromise their privacy to ensure children are safe in digital environment. They want legal obligation on online service providers to assess, mitigate the risk of child sexual abuse online, and they want a world where safety for children is at the heart of platform design and development rather than an afterthought. As the public overwhelmingly and consistently expressed their support for child safety online, ignoring such a mandate would put policymakers in a precarious position of not adhering to democratic principles. With crucial vote on the proposal set for the weeks to come, MEPs and representatives of EU member states bear a duty and a moral imperative to enact meaningful legislation for online child safety, which cover known and unknown material as well as grooming, included in end-to-end encrypted environment. As my colleagues mentioned, all children deserve protection. On that note, I would like to thank my co-panelists today and all of you here and online for your careful attention. All of our data is published online, both on ECPAT International website and Savanta website. You will have access to all the back-end questionnaire in national languages, the data table for each country, as well as the EU weighted table and summary of key findings. And I invite you all to have a look at them. We remain at your disposal for any question on our process, methodology, result. Please don't hesitate to contact us. For those following us online, you have the contact on the screen. For the others, I'm here and we are all here available during the breakfast coffee. ECPAT will continue to engage with all actors from the general public, governments, civil society organizations, and companies to turn this legislative process into tangible outcomes for child protection online. Thank you, everyone.